And a happy Sunday to you. This is Cards Hub 365 presented by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. All content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Roderick, Brenden Schaeffer here with you on a morning edition of the show. Brenden, Cardinals going for the series win, the rubber match today against the Phillies. You've been down at Busch Stadium the last 2 days. Got to be down there in the locker room and talking to Ollie yesterday for the first time in a week. What's your sense of the current Redbird roster as it's constructed?
Well, yeah, Joe, they had some moves yesterday with the roster that they had to sort out, and it was kind of interesting to figure what they were going to do about Mason Wynn, because Friday night after that happened, he leaves the game early. He had said originally, a couple days and would hope to be back at it. But then the morning comes, those conversations happen, and you kind of realize the roster crunch the Cardinals would have been in to try to carry him without being able to use him for a number of days. And so the Cardinals, through those conversations, eventually make the decision to put him on the IL. Evidently, Nolan Gorman was close to returning anyway. It was kind of discussed with Oliver Marmol. This wasn't a case where they feel they rushed Gorman back because of the circumstances with Wynn. He was already lobbying to not have to go to Memphis, not have to do a couple of games of a rehab assignment. He felt like with the work that he was doing in the cages and with his conditioning and running, trying to get over the hump with the hamstring issue that he had, that he would be ready to rejoin the team. And it kind of worked out in a serendipitous way because the Cardinals needed an additional infielder. I mean, when you have Pedro Pages playing second base the night before, it's probably not what you want to have that happen again, although it was kind of fun and it didn't really cost the Cardinals on Friday. Having Gorman back and being available was better for the situation they were in. So that's the roster move they made. They didn't have to make any 40-man moves. They didn't have to call up another shortstop. They feel that Thomas Saggese and Brendan Donovan can handle the load at shortstop for 10 days, and that's really all it should be for Mason Wynn. All he said, really, most of the time this happens, it's 4 to 6 days, and he's back up and going. But the Cardinals just didn't want to necessarily gamble on it being closer to that 6-day end of the timeline than the 4 days and having to play short for that period. So this early in the season, they said, all right, we're going to be careful with Mason Wynn. And now we'll get a look at what Saggese and perhaps Donovan can do it short.
What was that like at the stadium Friday night when you're sitting there as a fan too? You weren't in the press box and you look out there and there's Pedro Pages out there playing second base.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. The Cardinals had that Friday Night Live deal out in the Budweiser Terrace, and so the lines were a little bit long at the beginning of the game, so we kind of sat down for an inning, and then I went back out to the concessions, and I come back, and I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, what did I miss? And she goes, oh, nothing. I don't know. Arenado hit a fly ball. I was like, okay, fine. And then like a little bit later, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, now, wait a minute. What's Pedro Pages doing at second base? I have to like pull out my phone and start scrolling Twitter to figure out what exactly happened. I'm like, I don't see Mason Wynn. Where's Mason Wynn? And so that's obviously something that happened in between innings, but I gave my wife some trouble. I'm like, I asked you if anything happened, and the backup catcher's playing second base. You didn't give me the heads up on that. But yeah, that was something. And then you kind of find out the logic behind the decision, which is basically you had Brendan Donovan as the DH. And so most days it wouldn't be a problem. I know people are kind of critical and saying, I knew it. The roster construction is terrible. They have 3 first basemen and not enough other infielders. Most days you're going to be just fine. I don't really know if they had an inkling of the Mason Wynn issue, why Brendan Donovan was in the DH spot for that night, because that was really the worst spot for him to be, unless you want to burn the DH early in the game and have the pitcher have to bat. So that was a little bit curious, but on most days when Donovan's not the DH, you have enough coverage there for him to play second, for Saggese to play short, and it to all work out. But Pages was eager, Joe, and he was excited for the opportunity and even wore the gold-plated glove of Brendan Donovan, which made for, well, the jokes kind of wrote themselves.
Well, they're cowards today not putting Pages back at second base. We'll get to the lineup here in a bit. But back to the Nolan Gorman talk, because there was, when Friday, they come back from the road trip. So, there's more media there. There's more questions being asked. And we knew that yesterday was going to be the day that Nolan Gorman was eligible to come off the IL. And as of Friday night, when the media is there talking and you're asking for updates on Nolan Gorman, it was, yeah, you know what? We're going to work him out today, and we're going to see if there's going to be a rehab stint. That was kind of the plan for it. And the Mason Wynn injury really does. It shakes all of that up so much because they might tell you, they could sit there and they could say, yeah, he was ready. When you're talking Friday night about a potential rehab, and then the next thing you know, he's activated Saturday, it's going to raise some questions as to whether or not he is fully ready to go. And we're going to find that out today.
Yeah. And I guess you mentioned I was there as a spectator Friday, so I wasn't aware necessarily of exactly what was being said at that time. I think they were weighing that option of a rehab. Would they have been more inclined to send him if not for the Wynn situation? We'll never know the answer to that. But Ollie Marmol was pretty clear that, and again, like you said, they'll say one thing. It's kind of hard to look at it and say it might not have had some impact. But he was pretty clear that that was what Gorman was pushing for anyway. His readiness, if it was going to be a rehab, it wasn't going to need to be a long one. My only thought with it, and again, how much the Mason Wynn thing may have in reality changed the factors there, we don't know. My only thought is with a hamstring, you're talking about Mason Wynn's back and saying, hey, it's April, and that's the reason to be cautious and to make sure that you get out in front of it and you don't allow it to prolong. With Mason Wynn, he talked about, you could have him play through it, but what's the way you're going to go about doing that is to manage your pregame work, not try to do as much on your routine so that you've got enough in the tank for when the game comes. But then if you're trying to thread that needle for a week, for 2 weeks, that doesn't really serve you for the purpose of the long season. And so I completely understood everything they were saying with Mason Wynn, but then you could kind of turn around and say, well, is that applicable at all to Gorman? With a hamstring, you don't want to have the same thing happen where you maybe come back, you feel like you're good, but the weather's a little bit cooler, which they didn't have Gorman in the lineup yesterday afternoon when it was a little cooler. Now it's going to be a pretty warm day, so hopefully there's no risk associated with that when it comes to cooler weather. And maybe Gorman, we're going to get a chance to see what he looks like. I feel like the Cardinals wouldn't have done it with Gorman if they didn't feel pretty confident that he's on the other side of his hamstring, because remember, for him, it was one of those things where maybe he didn't even need an IL stint, but you take those 4 or 5 days rather than try to play short for a handful of games. And then you get on the other side of it. And then he's been pretty much full go the last few days in terms of the working out and what calisthenics and things he needs to do to make sure the hamstring's in good shape. I don't really think it's anything more than what the Cardinals have said. But certainly if you see Gorman play and then there's, a recurrence of a hamstring situation, we could definitely be talking about that differently. But hopefully this is just really convenient timing. One guy has a minor injury right when somebody else at a similar position group ends up getting over his, and it all works out that way. I think the Cardinals would welcome Nolan Gorman's bat back into the mix too, because after Ivan Herrera has gone down, we've sort of seen the offense begin to sputter a bit in recent days, and you're just looking for that punch from wherever you can find it right now.
Yesterday, 2 hits out of Wilson Contreras. So again, it's fingers crossed that's going to be the spark plug that he needs to get going. Let's get to the lineups, and we'll get to everything else offensively here in just a bit, because we do see that there's a bit of a change again, and we would expect this over the next, I guess, 10 days or so, or even longer with this lineup as they try to figure out what to do up top. But facing Zach Wheeler today, the Cardinals are going to go with Lars Nootbaar in left, Alec Burleson DHing, Brendan Donovan at short, Nolan Arenado at third, Wilson Contreras drops down to the 5 spot. He's at first base. Nolan Gorman at second, Jordan Walker in right, Yoel Pozo is behind the plate, and Victor Scott II batting 9th in center field. Brendan, you look at this, and the first thing that jumps out at me is you have 4 lefties in a row.
There are a lot of lefties, and I think that's not entirely uncommon when you're facing a pitcher like Zach Wheeler, where it almost sets up a scenario where, while most of the time we look at left, right, and say, hey, that's the way the Cardinals want to do it, so they're not as susceptible to that late inning reliever that can come through at a certain handedness and mow guys down. I think when you have an ace on the other side like Zach Wheeler, it's almost the opposite. When you have those left-handed bats at your disposal, Oliver Marmol will dare the opposing manager to go to that lefty reliever, because that means that Zach Wheeler is out of the game, right? And so the way that sets up, let's say Zach Wheeler has a standard outing and he's through the order a couple of times in 5, and obviously you could be close to doing that if you're into the 6th inning, if you're pitching really well. And then it's that 3rd time through the order that decision comes up where he's got maybe a little bit less gas in the tank and he's got lefty coming up. that's going to be the Cardinals' best opportunity to put runs up if they can get Wheeler a little bit less than 100% capacity, or the opposing manager can say, he's at less than 100% capacity, and this is a dangerous spot in the lineup. We're going to go to a lefty reliever, at which point Burleson gets pinch hit for, and you probably have Luke and Baker play DH the rest of the game. Like, that's a strategy that we have seen Ollie Marmol use, I think, a couple of times, where if you want the opposing manager, I believe it was very similar with Skeens, if I could go back and look, you want the opposing manager to basically have a tougher decision, stick with his starter, who is obviously a guy that can go 7 or more innings if he's on his game, or say, hey, we've got a lefty reliever that we can go to. You're almost daring happen. If there's a lefty reliever in there, Joe, they're not going to take Nootbaar or Donovan out for, a pinch hitter. That's just, you're going to go left on left. But that Burleson spot is the key there, because it's a very malleable spot. Anytime you get a lefty that comes into the game, that's when that spot becomes Luke and Baker more often than not.
Actually, against Skeens, they went Scott leading off against Skeens and gave Nootbaar the day off that day.
I don't know what the spots were behind him, but
that was a game. They went left, right. Okay. They went, that was Scott Contreras, Donovan, Arenado, Burleson, Walker, Paje, Siani, Win.
There might have been one spot, maybe it wasn't the Skeens game then, where they faced an opposing pitcher that I noticed. Okay, I
think you're talking about in the Boston series. I think that might have been in the Boston series. I think they did something similar, yeah.
But I think this is another example of that, where tough righty on the mound. You're going to put your prominent lefties that are healthy and available where they fit in, and I think that DH spot being Burleson and being in the 2-hole does set up, if there's, for whatever reason, Rob Thompson decides, all right, we're going to go to one of our top lefties in the pen for that part of the order. The Cardinals might just say thank you and be able to get Zach Wheeler out of the game. It's not like it's a very overt way of doing it. It's not that it's going to work. If Zach Wheeler is rolling, he faces those lefties for a third time, and it is what it is. But there is that kind of little gamesmanship, I think, that can go on, where Ollie Marmol can pull out that alternate DH if there's a lefty on the mound, and get a good look for Baker.
This is also the third game in a row. All 3 games this series, the Cardinals have played around with different options in the 2 slot. And this was kind of a big thing that we were discussing going into the weekend, when it was kind of apparent. It was like, okay, Wilson Contreras, they need to drop him down the lineup. They need to figure out a different, something different to do with him. I think this is something that we started talking about really Thursday on their off day. And since then, we've seen Jordan Walker, Luke and Baker, and now Alec Burleson all in that 2 slot. From there, it's apparent they want, when you go with also the other options we've seen there in Herrera and Contreras, they want a lot of thump there in that 2 spot. Ollie showed this in the past with putting Paul Goldschmidt in the 2 spot. So that is what he's going for, and that is going to be what I think we're going to see moving forward for those that might want to see a guy like a Mason Wynn batting there when he's back healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that time will tell if Mason Wynn heats up and continues to be more of an on-base threat. We know that there's power in the bat. At which point he's healthy and available, that becomes more of an interesting conversation. But I do think that there is that impetus to have it be a little bit of a power spot. And we've talked about with Ollie Marmol, the part of the reason he likes Lars Nootbaar at the top, other than the on-base skills, is he does have that ability to, one swing into the game, change the scoreboard, and hit a home run. So, anytime you can do that, I think it's valuable. And it's just interesting, rather than stacking more on base at the top. Like, if you wanted to go left, you could say, well, Donovan could be up there at the number 2, but they've kept Donovan in the 3 spot and kind of oscillated there with a little bit more of a power threat in the 2 hole. And then, whether Donovan's a power threat or just a good all around hitter in the 3 spot. But the other part of that is too, I think the value of having the 2 hole be somebody that can be changed out later in the game for a right-handed batter is something that I think makes a lot of sense today in particular.
Pitching today, it'll be Matthew Liberatore. This is also the second time that we've seen Pozo catching for Matthew Liberatore, so it does seem like there's something there with that. We saw it in Pittsburgh in Pozo's first game there, and now we're seeing it again. So that seems to be this seems to be Pozo day whenever Liberatore is on the mound. Yeah. Miles Mikolas
just real quick on that, it might be a little early to declare that. We remember back in Pittsburgh, it almost had to be Pozo because Pajes had caught a doubleheader the day before. But the fact that they did it the first time, whether they were thrilled about it or not, because I think it's like you want to make sure Libby is in a good spot and comfortable. Now that he has worked with Pozo in a real game, you can kind of say, all right, we do it again, because you have to find days for Pages to be able to get a blow. And if there's a comfort factor that, all right, it worked the first time, we might as well do it, rather than start to eventually. Pozo probably will have to be exposed to more different starting pitchers. But the fact that you did throw him with Libby once, it's at least a matter of convenience for now. I don't know if it's a personal catcher situation or anything, but I do think because it happened once and you're looking at the schedule going, all right, good time to get, Pages a day, because you can't have him catch every single game. And Pozo, by the way, has been a force with the bat. So I'm more excited maybe than anything to see what he does at the plate today against a tough starter, because he doesn't get cheated up there, Joe.
No, he's taking his hacks. He knows he's up here for a limited time right now, and he's going to make it worth it.
Yep.
While he's here and while he gets those opportunities. Miles Mikolas yesterday on the mound more than earned himself another start against a really, really good Phillies lineup. For those that might have looked at Miles Mikolas on there and got on your Pick Six, your DraftKings Pick Six app, and loaded up on Bryce Harper's and Kyle Schwarber's, wasn't a great day for you, because Miles Mikolas went out there and that was a pretty impressive performance.
Yeah, other than that, it got off to a little bit of a rocky start, and I think got squeezed a little bit in one at bat where I think there were 2 strikes that were missed, Joe, and that ended up prolonging the inning. And we did see an example of, you get into that 2-strike favorable pitchers count, and then you make just a bad pitch to Castellanos. And if he could limit those mistakes where, it's just kind of a get me over pitch in a 2-strike count, it's a completely different story for Miles Mikolas. But that was one that hurt you. And on a day where the offense didn't really produce, you end up in a bad situation. But no, he did. I mean, he had, I think, 11 or 12 in a row retired consecutively at a point, and then got blitzed for a couple more hits to give up another run a little bit later on in that outing. But you go 5 innings or so, and I think they wanted to get a look for Steven Matz to stretch him out before Wednesday anyway yesterday. So 5 innings, 3 runs. It doesn't look like a great ERA, but I'm telling you, like, if that's your kind of bare minimum, that can play if Miles Mikolas is your 5th or ostensibly your number 6 starter in terms of what you're expecting from him. Get through 5 or 6, get on that borderline of a quality start, and you could do a lot worse than that. It's just the games that I don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to have the patience for. If there's another Boston type of outing where he can't get through the 3rd, then suddenly you're going, now, wait a minute, we've got a 6-man rotation that we're trying to introduce. We don't have enough coverage in the bullpen for those types of outings to happen consistently, or really to happen at all. So I did say leading up, it was an important start for Mikolas with what he did, and also he elicited far more swing and miss than he did in Boston. I think that ends up being a situation where, yeah, he's locked in for the time being, and we'll see where it goes from there.
If you're familiar with Ump's Scorecard on Twitter, this is yesterday Scott Berry behind the plate for the.
Blow that up. Can you make that bigger? I can't even read it.
Can I make it bigger? I can make it full screen. That's as big as I can go with it. Yeah,
take me off the screen and just put you back on there. That for a moment you had that, and I thought it was a little bit bigger. Maybe not.
No, that wasn't bigger. No, I don't need to be. I don't need to be bigger either. But I can just put it up on this. Yeah,
I see green. I see green in the top of the 1st inning. Pitch number 2. That one was the pitch to Schwarber that was called ball 4.
Yes,
that was just that was a tough one. And then the one at the bottom of the zone is not numbered. I guess they're going to label that the 4th most impactful call. That one was in the same at bat to Schwarber, and you get either of those strike calls, and the Cardinals don't give up any runs in the 1st inning. Instead, they gave up 2. So that was, I mean, that ended up, you hate to have that happen in the 1st inning and then say, oh, that's why the Cardinals lose the game. But I mean, if the ump scorecard says, that ball 4 call was the 2nd most impactful of the game, it ends up being a pretty big play. The Cardinal offense should have been able to put up enough runs to where that's not the way that we view the game in retrospect, but it's a tough pitcher on the mound. Sanchez really looked pretty good yesterday. He's a different kind of lefty too. It's not like a soft tossed in lefty we talk about with the Cardinals. That guy gets it up 95, 96, 97. He had a good time against the Cardinals yesterday. It's just unfortunate that Miles was able to settle in after that, and probably would have had an all around different start that we'd be talking about if he would have gotten that call on Schwarber.
Yeah, and then you see the bottom one there too. That's the pitch in the 6th, Matz against Schwarber. It was a 3-1 count on that. Strike was called a ball 4 on that pitch, getting Schwarber on base. But as you look at this again, if you're unfamiliar with this, if you're watching, you're unfamiliar, at Ump Scorecards on Twitter, the guy that runs the account, he does it for every single game. that is out there. Also online at umpscorecards.com is where you could find every single all of these for every single game that's out there, just for the home plate umpire every game. So
it's so funny though. All three of those most impactful calls go against the Cardinals, right? There was one with Newpart batting that was called strike 3 that clearly is off the plate, and they called that the most impactful call. And it that's just one of those things that happen. His overall accuracy is 94, and you're like, yeah, pretty good day. But then you see where the most important calls ended up happening to go against the Cardinals. I don't know. Anecdotally, Joe, Cardinals fans probably feel like, oh, that's par for the course. They always, that's what always happens to us. I don't know if that's true. It feels anecdotally lately like it might be. When you see overall favor 1.43 runs for Philadelphia, I mean, that for having a 94% accuracy game and have that big of a differential favoring the Phillies, it feels like just one of those days. But maybe Cardinals fans will tell you, that's just kind of what happens. The umps tend to favor the other side for whatever reason that may feel.
And that is one that I would like to see the formula as to how they come up with the runs for Philadelphia and how the calls favor that for Philadelphia, because
win probability added is part of that, right? And like, how many runs did they produce from those,
but
plays?
2, I mean, they produced 2 runs in the first inning from that call. So where did the Cardinals get back a half run in that game if all 3 of these calls impact the Cardinals? If
I had to guess, the argument would be that it's not a guarantee to have caused 2 runs directly. It would be a case where, the expected runs there for Philly wasn't maybe 2, maybe it was 1.4 or whatever. Or maybe there were some calls that happened that we're not seeing that did favor the Cardinals to kind of bring that margin down a little bit. But I'm not a math magician to be able to tell you on the fly exactly what all that was.
Yeah. So that's a look at what it is today, or what it was yesterday. I couldn't tell you who's behind the plate today and what that means for anything.
It was CB on Friday, so it's not him. Yeah, CB Buckner was there Friday, I believe.
So whoever was at first yesterday will most likely be behind the plate in today's game for that. But just a few comments, by the way. I see in there Aaron commenting, saying that he's done protecting Miles and that we're getting paid to protect Miles. I can guarantee you that neither Brenden Schaeffer or me, Joe Roderick, are getting paid any amount of money to sit here and protect Miles Mikolas at any means. And I think I have been the biggest Michael McGreevy fan on Sports Hub STL since the inception of this, and would love nothing more than to see him get starts for the Cardinals this year. So in no way am I protecting any of the starting pitchers in this rotation until Michael McGreevy is up here in the rotation.
And by the way, if the Cardinals are handing out checks, Miles or any other players, I would appreciate, I'll give them my mailing address. I didn't know that was part of the deal, Joe, that they were handing out those stipends. I will gladly take one, but I have not been given one yet. And to that other point, he says he's done saying the contract plays. I think we've actually said the opposite. We've said because his contract is only a 1-year deal at this point, there's going to be more of a microscope on Mikolas. I was literally talking all week to the point that I kind of felt bad about it, because I even said Mikolas probably goes out and shoves on Saturday after I really played up how big of a start it would be for him if he didn't perform, what that might end up meaning. I think it was a huge start for him, and the fact that he was fine, not great, but acceptable, was important for him and his future in the rotation. If he had gotten shelled again, I would have been wondering if the Cardinals were ready to make a move. And he had a drastically better performance than what he did in Boston, even though he still gives up 3 runs. The 11 or 12 swing and misses compared to like 2 or whatever it was in the Boston game, like he was a much different looking pitcher in the game yesterday. Can he sustain that is going to be the entire question, Joe, because again, if it's going to be oscillating back and forth, we're going to keep getting data points on Miles. Before it was 2 starts. You said 1 bad, one fine. Now it's 2 fine, 1 really bad. If you get through 6 starts and it's about still a 50-50 split, there's not going to be a 7th start. Like, I do think it gets to a point where the Cardinals are like, once there's enough data that we can kind of guesstimate, all right, Miles is going to be good 80% of the time, but there's going to be that 20% that he's not. That's a lot different than saying, it's a 50-50 coin flip. I don't think they're going to live with a coin flip all summer, Joe, specifically because of the contract. Because the contract,
you already have the next guy that's going to make a start for you out of the 5 in the rotation is already up with the team in the bullpen, being Steven Matz. And you already have him that you can easily go to if you need to replace Miles Mikolas with another starter. And then after that, you have McGreevy. So you have guys waiting in the wings. This isn't a case of looking around and going, okay, well, give me a name if Miles Mikolas needs to be sat down, give me a name of somebody else, which the Cardinals have been in that situation in years past.
Yes.
Where we've gone into spring training going, man, they got 7 or 8 starters. And the next thing you're looking at, you're like, well, shit, they got 4 starters.
No,
they don't. Going to start everything.
Yeah. Because of the 7 and 8, several got hurt and 2 proved to be ineffective. That's how you get 2023 in a 90-some-odd loss season. I think it is a different set of circumstances this year. I'll continue to say, like, the onus is on Miles Mikolas to disprove 2024, to be like, that's not the pitcher I was. And so far, he's had a couple starts where he's gotten you by. My concern is, like, does he have an upside outing within him still where he can throw it back to, an 85 pitch, 7-inning shutout to be able to kind of offset some of those games where he doesn't do as well. That's what I think the Cardinals are going to be needing to see from him. But if when I say acceptable in terms of you didn't completely burn out your bullpen, get through 5 innings, keep your team in the game, and you can live with that from a number 5 starter, even if it's not the sexiest or the most exciting box score in the world.
Right. Again, what are we looking for every single time out? I mean, are we looking for 5 aces every single time? I didn't see who started for the Dodgers yesterday, but they got beat 16-0.
Didn't go well. Did not.
And that's an all-star team. That's an all-star team of just Cy Young candidate starters for them, and they gave up 16 runs. And it was
Roki Sasaki who started. He actually did okay. Their bullpen. Wow, the bullpen gave up 15 of those 16.
Oh, nice.
In 4 innings. So maybe that, but Dodgers fans could say fire the entire bullpen. And it's like, well, maybe, but you don't do.
Got a lot of all-stars in that bullpen too.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that when you're in April, the numbers from every game that's played, especially for a starting pitcher that only plays every 5 days, it gets amplified because you're like, well, that's 33% of his whole season, and he was awful. And so you do have to continue, I think, a consistent track back in order to avoid the numbers continuing to stay at that level. But it's not going to necessarily be April the 12th, especially when you go 5 innings, 3 runs. They'll take, and I know whatever that ERA would be, it's probably like a 5 ERA, Joe. But if the Cardinals were told, hey, you could get 5 1/3, 3 runs from Miles Mikolas every game, I think they might press that button and lock that in because he's their number 5 starter. You just need to make sure you're not burning out the bullpen. Granted, you need more from others if that's what you're accepting from your number 5 spot. You need Sonny to be an ace. You need Liberatore to continue to be a guy going 6+ and giving you quality starts every time out. You need Fetty to be more like the Fetty he was this week rather than the one that he was in Boston. If you're going to say, yeah, we're carrying a guy at the back of our rotation who doesn't have very much upside. That's Miles Mikolas right now. But as long as he doesn't give you the deathly games that he did in Boston, they're gonna take it, but the onus then becomes everybody else, and the offense has to be able to do enough to win some of those Miles Mikolas starts.
I also just pointing out other numbers around all of baseball. Emmanuel Clase, the closer for the Guardians, has already given up more runs this season than he gave up all of last season. He has given up 6 earned runs already this season. 7 innings pitched into it. He's given up 6 earned runs this year. Yep. Last year, 47 saves, 74 1/3 innings pitched. He gave up 5 earned runs all last year. Again, things change year to year. And again, we're going to sit here. The game against Boston for Miles was bad. It was bad.
As bad as it gets. Yeah.
Yeah. He came back, and yesterday that earned him a couple more. Let's see how it goes. And for a lot of this too, Brenden, I don't know about you. I've been watching just a lot of baseball. You throw on MLB TV, you throw on the MLB app, and you just watch games from all over the country. Watching baseball so far these first 2 weeks has just looked miserable with how cold it has been throughout the entire country. It's not fun to watch these guys play baseball in these elements in April. It's fun in October. In April, when it's miserable to watch, and I can't imagine playing in it too.
Yeah, and people don't like to hear anything that they can deem an excuse. No, I was literally saying if Miles Mikolas goes 2 innings and gives up 8 again, he shouldn't be on the team. Like, it was that close for me to being a conversation. But guess what? you have to watch the game. You can't just decide what you think of a player and say, no, in my mind, Miles Mikolas stinks, and so whatever he does on this Saturday is irrelevant. What he did was, if the umpire did his job, he goes 5 innings and gives up a run. And that's perfectly acceptable from your number 5. So he gave up 3, and ultimately the offense, nobody seems to be mad about that. The offense ends up, not doing enough to where that 5 and 3 didn't really get the Cardinals a legit chance to win. But that was only because the bats were quiet for, again, like the 3rd day in a row. I think that's an important storyline. They might need to scratch across on Zach Wheeler the way that they did on Paul Skeens earlier in the week to get everybody feeling back good about the offense again, because if that suddenly becomes a trend, now we've sort of flip-flopped with the concerns that we had from the very beginning. Oh, the offense is great, but the pitching is unreliable. You don't want to see that go in the other direction with your bats. So, we'll see. But right now, I think 5 days from now, it'll be another conversation, but there's bigger problems to worry about than Miles Mikolas going 5 and 3. If it gets worse than that, we'll be back to talking about, hey, can the Cardinals sustain having him in the rotation? But it's kind of a week-to-week endeavor right now. And until he kind of gets into that consistent rhythm, it's going to be that conversation. It's not a comfortable one, but I think in a transition year with guys that don't have contracts and you've got Michael McGreevy waiting in the wings, it is a conversation.
Throwing it out there. Yeah. We talked about the umpiring earlier. This umpiring crew is a living billboard for the ABS.
I'll tell you
next year. I don't know if you made it back in time, because I know you were down at the ballpark. I don't know if you made it or we were able to get in front of a TV for the first inning yesterday, but Chip, and it was Mark Sweeney yesterday on the call. Chip and Mark Sweeney was talking all about how ABS just needed to be here, and Chip talking about everything he saw in spring training. Yeah, with that ABS system, it kind of is. I know they were testing it, and I know that what we saw in spring training. It sucks that we saw it be so effective in spring training to then just say, "Hey, okay, now we're not using it anymore." That's rough.
It was one of those deals where you go, "Hey, they've used it in the minors. We need to integrate and let big league players have an idea for what it's all about before implementing it." But then when it goes so smooth, you're like, well, wait, there's nothing to tweak. There's nothing to change. Like, I even kind of disagreed with Chip. His mention was like, it gets a little tedious if you continue to get challenges right. Maybe you don't have the ability to, win until you lose and then you're out of challenges. I disagree. I think it's going to keep umpires accountable if you have the ability to continue retaining your challenges every time you get one right. You don't lose those challenges until you start getting them wrong. It may slow the game speed down a little bit, Joe, but I think in the long run, umpires are going to have to wake up and go, oh, I actually have to be good at my job. There's actual accountability on me now. If you just say, 3 per game, I don't think that's enough. I don't think that's enough to change, to have umpires really have that accountability. And I get it. We rag on umpires. In theory, they should be the best in the world because they're doing it at the highest level. And so maybe there's just no humans out there that can be better than these umpires. I feel like if you had a little bit of accountability on your job from a day-to-day basis, Joe, where you had to be better, or you're going to face a little bit of public ridicule, or you're going to be embarrassed by the hitters continuing to tap their helmet and go, well, I better get these calls right. I better do a little bit more homework. I think it's just natural for ABS to be a really, really good solution. I think pitchers should like it. I think batters should like it. There will be moments where you go, oh, I really thought we had this strikeout, and then the call got changed, and I'm sad as a fan. I think the equity of the situation is brilliant, and what it would make umpires have to be ready to do is brilliant. So it could not come soon enough.
And it takes so little time, too.
It does.
We're not talking about watching college basketball, watching the Final Four last weekend was that
brutal. Watch SEC basketball all year like I had to do with Pat Adams refereeing every other game, and it was just like, we're going to review everything for no reason. Yeah.
Having to go back and review if it, who it touched last on, and doing that stops the game. The ABS system, it's a simple, you tap your head. Okay.
10 seconds.
Move forward.
It's halfway. It's not even a full pitch clock that it takes a lot of times. They have it up, they go, and it doesn't, like, if the technology is good enough to do it with that expediency, it should already be implemented. But I understand there's the hoops you got to jump through, and the unions got to sign off and everything. Don't let the umpires be the cartel on this thing and say, oh, you can't do it because it's going to make us look bad. Tough, man. The umpires, I get they've got a hard job to do. They make good money to do it, and holding them accountable, just like players are held accountable with their statistics, and they, you know what, if you go a full season, you don't get any hits as a player, you're probably not in the big leagues the next year. I think there needs to be a little bit more of that accountability for umpires, and ABS would do that.
Right. It's not making you look bad. It's making it accurate. Hey, I messed up. Okay. I didn't see that. It's fine. We've been doing it for years now with plays on the bases where, again, a lot of it's bang, bang. You look at the science that goes behind hitting a pitch. Imagine just having to call that too with the new BS of the way the catchers are going about it. We can get rid of that too. I'll sound like the old man here that hates
the framing.
Yes.
I have to be honest. I don't know. I think Pedro Pages rates out as a pretty good framer from like what I have seen from the numbers, but sometimes watching like that Schwarber at bat yesterday, I feel like he took strikes that were strikes if you just hold it there, but there's always that impetus to pull it into the middle of the zone. And when you do that, the umpire almost gets fooled by it. Like, if it's a strike, don't pull it, because then if it's just going to stay there, it looks really good and it looks like the strike that it is. But when you're trying to convince the umpire that a strike is a strike, some umpires might take that and go, yeah, screw you. I know what you're trying to do, and I'm not a fan of it. If that costs the Cardinals in the Schwarber at bat, although I'm probably the wrong person to speak on it, somebody with more experience in this field can tell me why they're doing it that way. But as a baseball fan, Joe, I do look at that sometimes and say, yeah, pull it in on a questionable call. But if you're the catcher and you go, my dude just dotted it up, don't pull it. Just leave it right there so the umpire cannot try to be, because you almost like deke the umpire in a certain way. That's how I see it. I don't know if you agree with that. I'm not knocking Pedro Pages if that's the way they teach it. But as a fan, I was looking at that going, I don't know. I think you might have cost him by trying to convince the umpire that a ball was a strike when really the strike was a strike if you had just left it there.
Yeah, I do think that if you don't have the ability to get the call right with the ABS, the new way of going about it with going from the bottom up that we're seeing, and just the way that we initially, I think we first saw last year, it first kind of came to light last year with the way Wilson Contreras was catching and had his arm broken because of the way that they kind of had him. Yeah, because of how close you are in doing that. I think that is more so messing with these umpires because they see it too. This isn't a secret. The first guy that did it before it became a league-wide thing, the first one doing it, I'm sure pulled off a few strikes. Now that it's known around the league and now that every catcher seems to be doing it, it's one of those where umpires are going to sit back there and they're going to say, we're not going to fall for it. The same way with the framing and bringing the ball back into it. You just stand there and there's a better way of doing it. And if you have the ABS system, it's going to make all of this null and void anyway.
Yep, I'm with you. And I think a lot of baseball fans agree with it as well. And it's different, too, than just – I think it's enough to have the challenge system. It's different than just saying automatic umpires have no role. No, like, if you just hold them accountable with a challenge system, I think that's enough to get everybody lined in and stop some of the foolishness that we see. Because batters know the strike zone. Pitchers, catchers know the strike zone. They'll dial their complaints in as well. You'll see less of this umpires getting, upset because they feel they're getting shown up by a batter that's griping about the strike zone. Put your money where your mouth is and challenge it if you have a problem with it. And if you can't successfully challenge, then shut up, because you're not going to have your challenges anymore. It is such a fair, equitable system for all parties involved that you're right. It's a shame that we have to wait till 2026. If MLB doesn't find a way to make sure it is implemented next year, they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, it is a win-win-win all the way around to make sure that happens next year. Don't care who has to sign off on it or what needs to happen. It's got to be implemented for next season.
Implement ABS, ban Zach Hampel from all baseball, all MLB games. Boom.
Dude.
Rob Manfred, Hall of Fame.
I mean, that guy, we're 40 minutes into the show, but we could spend a lot more time talking about that guy. I think that's like, it's rare to see social media and Twitter rally around a topic and everybody universally agrees on it. Everybody universally agrees on, if you see Zach Hampel at a game trying to catch a ball, you know what to do. Like, that seems to be, everybody sort of has the same mindset now.
And it's easy to tell who he is because he's wearing a shirt with his name on it.
Got his name and his face on it. It's like, the kids, Samuel puts in that the kids love Hampel. That's fine. Let them love him.
My son, I don't think he has any idea who Zach Hampel is. So I'll have to poll my 11-year-old team tomorrow and see if they know who that is.
The shame of it is there are things like his YouTube channel and everything, you could say good for young people getting involved in baseball if he's able to do those things and take people behind the scenes and stuff. But could it be anybody else that that acts any differently that could have a channel like that to be able to get people hyped up about baseball and kids hyped up about baseball? But whether they love him or not, Samuel, I hear you. His antics are a little bit much for me, given that he's like a grown man. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, I suppose.
I will be back on the post-game show later on this afternoon with Chris Pelican. 1:15 start time for the game today. Zach Wheeler going up against Matthew Libator in Sunday afternoon action. It's the rubber game of the 3-game set between the Phillies and the Cardinals. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. We'll talk to you next time right here on Sports Hub STL, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours.